Ah, okay. Now, um, we are talking about calculating interest. Yeah, I think you will find this to be a very simple unit we're doing over the next 3 days. Um, it's, I think it's incredibly simple, actually. And so, what I'd ask you to do is to, of course, be patient until I've gotten through at least a good portion of it before you start asking me all sorts of questions, Allie. And give me a chance to actually teach most of it. And that way I can actually maybe finish the lesson, and then maybe I'll have answered your questions, oddly enough. Jacoby. Okay. All right, let's go. So interest is basically where you get like if you have a bill, like if you have a credit card, they'll charge you interest for borrowing that money from, because basically when you use a credit card, you're borrowing money from the bank that gave you the credit card. Okay. And then they're going to charge you a certain amount of money every day, actually, not even every month, but every day, for the honor of having borrowed their money. Now, the other way you get interest is if you have like a savings account. And then it turns around and you're basically saying, okay, I'm going to give the bank $10,000 to hang on to. And then for the honor of them doing that, then they're going to pay me some interest. Now, here's how life is interesting. So your credit card is probably going to be somewhere around 17%. And the amount of money they're going to pay you for the interest is going to be probably, if you're lucky, about 2%. So when you borrow their money, they charge you 17%. And when they borrow your money, they give you 2%. This is why banks have pretty buildings, because everything they do is making them money. Okay. So you can see how if they're making 15% on every dollar that passes through their bank, that's a lot of money, right? You can imagine that, right? If you have billions of dollars flowing through a bank and your profit is 15% of that, that's a lot of money. I mean, that's a heck of a lot of money, right? I mean, 15% of $1 billion would be $15 million, right? It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. All right. Short definition of interest. Now, in this case, we're going to largely be, right now, we're going to be doing simple interest, I think, for the most part. I don't believe that I have anything in here that's doing compounded interest yet. No, this one is just simple interest. So we're going to start with just the basic concept of how to understand how we apply percentages to both savings and to borrowing. Okay. So it says here, Robert borrows $34,000 from his friend for 6 years. Wow. Robert has a really good friend. I don't know any friends I would lend $34,000 to. Of course, right now, if I was going to have $34,000, I'd have to like close out my retirement fund. From his friend for 6 years. 6 years. And it's at 22.5% annual. So what that means is that every year he's going to have to pay, he's going to pay $2, he's going to pay 2.5% of the original money every year. Okay. So the reality is far different from this, but we're doing this, we learn this first to understand how to do interest first, and then we get into the more real life stuff. Okay. In high school, you'll get into stuff called amortization, which is basically what a real loan looks like, where you slowly pay it off and the principal slowly drops and the amount of interest you pay slowly drops. So anyway, so the way we're going to calculate simple interest is interest. I meant to leave that E out. I was just testing you to see if you're paying attention. Is we're going to take the amount. Anthony, can you turn that down just a titch? Times the rate times the term. So if you look on this, you'll see that they have simple interest equals the principal, which is the original amount of money, the rate, which is the instant interest rate, and then the term being the amount of time spent paying it off, all divided by 100 will give you the simple interest paid, okay? Now, so that looks like this. Now, what do you, oh, sorry. What do you suppose that 100 is for? Why is there a 100 there? Jacoby?
Like, because he still owes like 100% of the money.
That's a really good guess. It's not right, but I like how you're thinking. You're in the right direction though. So I like that. Do we normally multiply by 2.5 if that's the interest rate? What do we do with 2.5% to make it a number we can do something with? How do we, Jacoby?
Don't you move the decimal like 2 places over?
Yeah, and if I move it 2 places, I've just divided by 100, haven't I?
Yes.
And that's what this is for. So it basically takes into account the dividing by 100 so that the number of percent turns into the actual decimal that we really need to calculate the number. Kind of interesting, don't you think? Now, whenever I'm doing something like this, if I can drag off 2 zeros here and make my life easier, I like to do that right off the bat, right? Because can't I take 100 off the bottom and 100 off the top if it's all multiplication? Sure can. It's like cross canceling, isn't it? So I'm going to get that the interest is going to be 340 times 2.5 times 6, and then whatever that is. Now let's look on here what we have. So you can see that simple interest, principal amount, rate per period, and the number of periods. So down, gosh, that is small. Is that even small for you guys? You know it's small if it's small for young people that have like, you know, dang near telescopic vision. So you see, here's what we wrote, and that's exactly what we wrote on our piece of paper, right? And then when you calculate it out, you find out that he's going to pay interest of $5,100 over the course of 6 years. So another thing we might, oh, why did it freeze? Come on, don't freeze. One moment, I got to restart it. It froze up on me. Come on. Come on, where'd you go? Where'd you go? All right, hold on. Just got to get this back over here. And then we will share it again. Okay, so if I asked you what was the total interest percentage-wise that he paid over 6 years, then you would look at 6 years times 2.5, which would give you 15%, right? Because 6 times 2.5 would be 15, right? All right. Does this make sense so far? Now, we're just starting here, right? But I want to make sure that you're following what I'm doing so that what I'm showing here is of value. Does anyone have questions on what I've done so far? Yes, Allie.
What was the 6 times 2.54 again?
This is just like the total interest. Sorry, I should have labeled that. Thank you very much for asking that. So that would have been the total interest paid over the total term of the loan, okay, using simple interest. All right, which was basically right here, correct? I mean, that's basically what this is right here. What is the actual interest rate, right? Okay. So we're good so far, no questions? Well, of course you don't 100% get it yet because we're just starting. I just want to make sure that you're following along and that you're seeing, oh, okay, I can see what we're doing. All right. I mean, I'm never going to leave you with one example. That's ridiculous. My cables are attempting to invade our learning space here. I apologize. I don't know why they're being so rude. Now, let's take a look at this one here. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Now, David received an investment return. So that means he got money back from something he was loaning money to or investing in, like the stock market or something like that, okay? He earned $1,050. 20% of his capital went into McPillar stock. 20%, whoop, got a 5% return, which means that they got 5% interest effectively, right? That they earned 5% on their money. 30% was in pork bellies. That's what they make bacon out of. They actually have stuff like that where they're like, got 7% return. And the remainder was invested in underwater mining operations, which would be 50%, and got 15% return. Now, before you start panicking, going, what do I do with all this? Don't panic. How much money does David have invested in all of his investments? Now, in order to figure this out, we're going to have to kind of work backwards, okay? So, yeah. So they want to know what his principal is. Principal, yeah. Principal, like in a school, is a pal at the end. My mom always talked about the fact that a principal is a friend for life, is a pal for life. And that was how you were to remember how to spell principal at a school versus I have principles, as in I have good character and good ideas. Anyway, little history lesson from 9 million years ago and how they taught us stuff back then. So $1,550 equals so he got 5% on 20%, right? So we got to figure out how much interest he paid, how much return he got right here, total, right? And then we're going to be able to figure out how much money he actually made. So you're going to be able to say the principal times the interest is going to equal this, right? Isn't that basically what we need to find out what the principal is? Does that make sense? Because whatever you initially invested, you take the interest rate and that'll give you this 1,050 that he said he got. So now we got to take this stuff and we have to say, well, okay, but how do we find out what the total interest was? Well, if it was 100% of his investment at 8%, we'd know that his interest rate was 8%, right? Because if 100% of everything he got and he earned 8% on it, then we'd be able to say, oh yeah, so he earned 8%. But he didn't earn 8% on everything. He had some limit. So now we're going to have to figure it out piece by piece. So first, I've got 20% was at 5%. So 20% of 5%, 30% of 7%, and finally 50% of 15%. And what we'll do is when we get these interest rates, we're going to add them together and it'll give us like a combined total interest that he made on his investment. Does that make sense? Do you see how I'm doing that? Because 50% at 15% return means that he made 7.5% on his money just because of this. Because he had half of his money at 15%. So half of his money earned 15%, but that's really only 7.5 of everything that he invested. Are we seeing that? Little bit, un poquito. Okay. So 0.2 times 5 is going to give me 1%, right? No, what is it going to be? Brain, sorry, is going to be 0.1 as a multiple, right? Because 0.2 times 5 is going to be 0.1, right? No, wait. Sorry, it's going to be 1. Sorry, brain fart. Excuse me, sorry. 30% of 7, 0.3 times 7 is going to be 2.1, right? Take a look at that. I'm just multiplying 0.3 times 7. 3 times 7 is 21. I moved the decimal point 1 spot, I get 2.1. And finally, 0.5 times 15 is going to give me 7.5, right? And we talked about that. It was going to be a 7.5%. So when I add these three up, I'm going to get 9.6. Does that look right? No, 10.6. Excuse me. Does that look right, guys? You see how that adds up? Aaliyah, let me finish first. Just pay attention. Let me finish. So now I'm going to have so this is going to be what I have over here, right? So now I'm going to divide 1050 by 10.6. And let's see what that comes out to. Yeah.
Would we times it or divide it?
Wait a minute. Wait a minute, brain fart. I have to convert it to a decimal, right? Because this is still the percent. Sorry. I love it how this district will call us in the middle of the day. Thank you so much. And I come up with 9.9%. Now, if we're not sure about this, let's do this again. Oh, wait a minute. Oh my God, see, I'm having issues here, sorry. This is the amount, that's the principal. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, let's go over this again. My little brain got lost. My little brain fell off the choo-choo track. So let me go over this again. Sorry. It happens, right? Once in a while, we have these issues. All right. So I'm looking at 100% of the money that he basically put into a bank or some investment. And it shows what percentage rate he got as a return on each of those investments. They want us to find out how much money he originally invested, right? So we figured out what the percentages were by multiplying, right? How in terms of its percent of the whole amount of money that he had, right? So we know that his percent was 10.6. And when we divide that amount into 1,050, we get $9,905. $9,905. So if we look at this, and we divide and we make a ratio like we're making a percent, right? Because 1,050 is what part of this? And it came out to 10.6. So there's our interest rate right there, right? Do you see that? Okay. Don't panic. We're just doing some examples. So I know some of you are out there panicking. I know Allie's like ready to walk into traffic, but it's going to be all right, Allie. Try to relax. I mean, I'll admit that's kind of an involved one. All right, so let's look at this one. Mr. Brett is taking out a home loan of $53,200 at 4%. He plans to pay the loan off after 2 years. What will be the total principal plus interest payment be to pay it off in 2 years? So what they want to know is, at this interest rate, how much will he have to pay over 24 months, because that's 2 years, right, to pay this all off, right? So I need to calculate what is 4% of this amount and add it, and then I'll know what the total amount will be that he'd have to pay, right? For 2 years. But this is an annual, so he's really going to have to pay 8%, right? Because each year he pays 4%. Yes? Okay, Yanira's nodding, Camden's nodding. Some people are staring at the screen like, I don't know what. So 53,200 times 8%, and then divided by 24 months. That's how much you'd have to pay per month. Now, all they're asking for is how much is he totally going to have to pay? Well, I think it's more interesting to know how much he has to pay per month personally, but okay. So 53,200 times 1.08. Now, whoops. Now, I multiply by 1.08 because I want to know what the final amount he has to pay is, right? And that final amount that he has to pay is going to be 100% plus 8%, right? Remember, the 0.08 is the 8% he has to pay on top of the 100% of the original amount. Yes? Because he has to pay them back all $53,200, right? So let's write down 57,456. So if he wants to pay this off in 2 years, he has to pay that much money in 2 years. Now, that's not a lot of interest. That's only about $4,000 interest if you look at the two amounts, right? Here's what he borrowed. Here's what he's going to pay back. It's all right, Julie. It's all good. I know you're not like leaving because I'm ugly or anything. I just realized it's an internet problem. All right. And if I wanted to know how much he had to pay a month, I'd divide it by 24, wouldn't I? Does that make sense? Over 2 years, it'd be 24 months. So the monthly payments would be, let's do it just for interest sake, shall we? Divided by 24. So he'd actually have to pay $2,394 per month to pay that off in 2 years. That's a lot of money, huh? Okay. Are we doing well so far? Okay. Don't worry, we have, we're working on it. Don't worry. Let's look at the last one that we have here. Dennis lends $25,420 to his employees for 8 months at 5%. Now, 5% is, yeah, Jacoby.
Why would he lend the money to his employees when he could just pay them the money in their paychecks?
Because it's not their paycheck, it's where people are borrowing money from him on top of what they get paid.
Oh,
That I don't know anywhere where this happens much of all. Sometimes maybe in private businesses that might happen. It never happens in a public business. Okay. So 5% is the annual interest, right? So that's how much you would pay in a year, right? How many months did he do it for? 8. 8 out of what?
12.
8 out of 12 times 5% is going to be the amount of interest that he received for that 8 months. Does that make sense? If 5% is how much is in a year, then 8 out of 12 is going to be times 5% is going to be how much interest he made during those 8 months, right? Yeah. 8%, 8 over 12 is 0.75. No, 0.67, sorry. 0.67, right? This is basically 2/3, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to take 0.67 times 0.05, right? That's going to be the interest rate. Yeah. So let's so it comes out to 0.0335. So this is the interest rate, correct? You see that? So I'm trying to find out how much interest he's going to pay. Now I'm going to take this principal times the interest, and that'll tell me, yeah, times 25420. And you can see this is how much interest he made. Does that make sense? Because this is 25,420 times 3.35%, right? Because that's what this translates into. Yes, Jacoby, you can always do that. You don't need to ask, just go. Does that make sense, people? Yeah, Allie.
Isn't there another way that you could do it by taking like the full and by going 5% times the full amount of money and then taking that answer and like dividing or subtracting 12 and then adding the 8 months?
Totally. Yes, completely. Because it's the same concept, right? I mean,
Because that's how I was doing it on iExcel and it was working.
well, that's fine. So let's look at that. Shall we calculate it that way just to prove it? So
Sure.
25,000.
I don't remember if you subtract.
So if he did it for a year, he'd get $1,271, right? Now, if I multiply that by 0.67, look what I get. Because 0.67 would be the decimal equivalent of 2/3, right? Because 2/3 is 0.6 repeating. So you see how the numbers are exactly the same here? Remember, it's all multiplication, Allie. So the order in which we do it doesn't matter. The reason I did it in this order was to teach a concept of that we're taking part of the interest rate and then we're multiplying it. That's why we get it different. But the reality is it's really just, you're really just doing the principal times the interest. Or in this case, the interest is going to be, the interest is going to be 0.05 times 2/3, or better yet, 8/12, right? That's all we're really doing. Well, but the interest is also going to be times the principal, right? And if you want to know how much interest you paid, where'd she go? Did she leave? Oh, there she is. Somebody else left. Oh, Audrey, you have a question, please? All my pictures shifting because.
So could I just do it the way that iExcel taught us?
If that works, yeah, sure. That's not a problem. Is that how they taught it? You do it by the original interest rate and then you take the fractional part of it. That's fine because both of those are accurate. Okay. There's nothing wrong with either of those methods. How do we know it's not wrong? Because it gets us the right answer every time, right? This is all multiplication, isn't it? Multiplication is commutative, right? Which means I can do it in whatever order I like. So I can do it in this order, right? I can mix it up and I can do this one, right? I could do P times 8/12 times 0.05. I could do it in any of those orders. It doesn't matter because it's multiplication. Since multiplication is commutative, it means that I can change the order of the factors and it's not going to change the value of the answer. Okay? Yeah? Yes? Okay. So, oh my God, what? All right. Yeah? What, Jasmine? I'm in class. What's up? Well, I'm in the middle of class right now, sweetheart. You want to try to call mom and see what if she can talk right now? Because I can't talk right now. Okay, bye. Okay. All right. So that makes sense so far? Yeah, Audrey.
So for the IXL, it's I equals P times P R and then T. So would that just be exactly what you wrote?
Yeah, that's basically the same thing. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, it's perfectly acceptable. Yeah, and I just, you guys know that I teach from a very organic place, right? I mean, I don't teach all these big highfalutin stuff. I just talk about what are we doing? What are we trying to figure out, right? So yeah, you can say that interest equals the principal times the rate times the term, right? Right? Because the term here is going to be 8/12, the rate's going to be 5%, and the principal is going to be the 25,420, right? The reason I don't always teach it this way, because frankly, there have been times I've taught it this way, and then I get kids that, oh, I forgot to memorize the formula. It's like, well, I don't want you to memorize the formula. What I want you to understand is how it works and why it works, right? So, Audrey, there's nothing wrong. If you can memorize the formula and you can apply it, it's not a problem. But I always try to teach it from the standpoint of helping you to understand how the math works, right? So I go behind the curtain and I say, here's what it looks like on the other side. Let's look at some of these bad boys. So our homework tonight is going to be this page and this page. So you have a whopping 13 problems for homework tonight. I think we can manage 13 problems. What do you guys think? Oh, 4 problems, 14 problems, excuse me. Well, actually, no, 13, because the last one, you're just going to pick the remaining answer, right? You scoundrels. I know you guys think. All right, so let's look at this one. He deposited $5,500 for 6 years at 2.4%. How much simple interest will he earn? So this time, let's do that simple interest formula. Right? Isn't that what we do here? So we're going to get isn't that what we've got? Is that basically what it is? Does that look good?
Is this our homework?
Yeah, I'm doing some of your
Sure.
homework with you.
Okay.
I thought I'd do a couple of them just to make sure you got what I'm doing. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically I'm doing one multiplication problem on my calculator, right? And there's how much interest he earned. See how I calculated it? Just exactly what's there, right? And I got $792. Yeah? Yes, okay, I got nods. How about this next one? This is number one. How about number two? What will the total principal plus interest be? Okay, so PI is going to be the
You
principal.
can't really see.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling me. So the principal and interest is going to be equal to the principal plus the principal times the rate times the term, right? Isn't that what the principal and interest is going to be? Because this is the interest and then here's the principal. If I want to know the total principal and interest for a loan, I've got to add that principal to whatever the interest amount is. And then you're just going to plug the numbers in. Right? That's supposed to be 412, excuse me. I know that's messy, I'm sorry. Isn't that what I did? I just wrote down that interest rate from this, right? 47,300, 3% in 4 months. Isn't that what I just wrote down? So you're going to do this multiplication and add it to this amount. Yeah?
What would that fraction be as a decimal?
I'm sorry. Well, 4/12 equals 1/3, which would be 0.33. Right, because 1/3 is 0.3 repeating. Questions? Anything? Hello? Yeah, Allie.
Is that all we're doing on our homework is just those simple steps?
Yeah, it's a simple skill. I
Okay.
didn't say it was going to be hard. I just said it was going to have to get done, right? You guys were already, were some of you already doing the IXL that was due tomorrow, but that we were going to theoretically start tomorrow already, you crazy lunatics? Is that what
We
you
have
were working on?
IXO tomorrow.
What's that? Yeah,
We have
tomorrow's gonna be-
IXO.
tomorrow will end up being an IXL day because lesson on day one, right? Let me kill this recording because we're done with the recording.
Well, what